Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Director of Cricket Andy Hurry and Head Coach Jason Kerr. We're going to look ahead to the 2023 season, but before we do that, we're going to look back on 2022. A season of ups and downs, Jason Kerr. How would you summarise 2022 overall?
I think if you look at historically, we've been competing in all three competitions, and certainly the 2022 season wasn't that. So I think on reflection, it was a disappointing year. There's some incredible highlights, some incredible performances throughout the season, but I think to summarise the whole thing, it was a disappointing year for us.
Obviously, Somerset County Cricket Club isn't just about the first team. Director of Cricket Andy Hurry, how would you summarise it as a whole, 2022, from a pathway perspective and from the point of view of the club as a whole?
I think it's fair to say it was a bit of an emotional rollercoaster. Some unbelievable experiences that we all witnessed and all felt from a performance perspective out there on the field. But interestingly enough, behind the scenes, there's been some real progress. Some progress with players developing through further opportunities in second team cricket, and we found out a lot about a number of players that's helped us make some really good informed decisions for the 2023 season, and also the evolvement of the pathway as well, with Matt Drakely now coming in, taking over from Steve Snell. Seeing that evolution and that fresh thinking and that aspiration that Matt's got to really drive the pathway has been really great to observe. And again, the collaboration between Devon, Cornwall and Dorset is going from strength to strength as well. So there's lots of good things going on behind the scenes and lots of good things happening out there on the grass as well. But it's definitely been an emotional rollercoaster this year.
Let's look at each competition as in isolation, if you like. Jason Kerr, we'll start with the Vitality Blast. Another trip to finals day. A lot of teams would consider another finals day a bit of a success, but does making it to the semi-final again this year constitute success for Somerset County Cricket Club?
No, is the short answer. I think the start of every campaign, certainly start of the Blast campaign, you want to get to finals day, and I guess that's the first aim. But I think how we've played over the last certainly 2 or 3 years, getting to finals day certainly wasn't enough. We didn't turn up. It was a disappointing performance actually on finals day for how well we played in the competition. To arguably have an off day on finals day was really disappointing. So it certainly doesn't constitute success on the whole, but I think what we want to do is continue to keep putting ourselves in that position and creating opportunities to win trophies. So I guess in that sense, that's something we can look back on fondly and build on for next year.
You mentioned how we played and some of the cricket that we played during that competition. So many standout moments. What were some of the highlights in the Vitality Blast for you this year? Or last year?
It's almost too numerous to mention. I think I certainly wouldn't go into individuals at this stage. I think collectively as a side, the brand of cricket, I know it's sort of a bit of a cliche word these days in cricket, but the way we'd played and the way we'd built over 2 or 3 years, I guess from the individual's point of view, the clarity and skill levels that they'd shown as individuals that then obviously helped the team win, for me was the most pleasing bit. It was, I guess, when you sit and watch and you get an opportunity to observe like we do, it can look quite formulaic, but I think what that says to me is that the guys are getting better at the roles that they fulfil for the side, and that will stand that side particularly in good stead moving forward.
What lessons have we learned from the 2022 Vitality Blast?
In essence, what I've just said, really. I think if you look at the emergence of someone like Ben Green, he had an opportunity to fulfil a specific role on numerous occasions. So his death bowling went from strength to strength. He had opportunities to win games and play that role at the back end of an innings. So his experience as an individual, the growth and confidence and skills that he's developed, again, you need people. If you're going to be successful in those competitions, you need people that, I guess, pieces of the jigsaw that come together to fulfil those roles and give you opportunities to win. So, as I say, we're a lot clearer, or the individuals in the dressing room are a lot clearer on the roles that they're going to fulfil within sides, and obviously we try and add world-class overseas players to that.
Let's move on to the Royal London Cup, the one-day cup that is going to be taking place again in 2023. We once again saw the emergence of some excellent young talent. You touched on it just now, Andy, about the role that the pathway has in the future of the club. How important is the pathway to the development and then the first team opportunities of these young players that we've seen coming through?
Yeah, it's vitally important. I think, we've been very fortunate here for a significant number of years that there's been a lot of investment. There's been a lot of real quality expertise supporting young players' development coming through. And we go right the way back. Jace oversaw the academy, and now we're seeing the fruition of that. Some senior players have gone on to play international cricket, and that's been continued on, for a number of years. And now with Matt being on board and leading the academy and the pathway, it's again really, really important for us to understand how players are really developing and evolving. And the Royal London provides us a fantastic opportunity, not only to get some observations of players that are in our system, whether it's on the academy or playing senior age group cricket, but also players that potentially have been in our pathway historically. And there's a couple of examples of them in last year's Royal London that we've got awareness of, we're continuing to monitor, and then allowing them opportunities in second team cricket, again to gather more information and evidence to then provide them with an opportunity in the Royal London, enables us again then to make really good informed decisions regarding following seasons. And we've seen that with the recruitment this year of Alfie Ogborn, and that's been based on his experiences through the pathway, and then opportunities in second team cricket. That provided then him an opportunity to come into the Royal London squad. And then, he demonstrated what his potential is, and that's what a key word, it's the potential. So now working with the professional staff on a full-time basis, there's a real window of opportunity now to really grow and evolve his potential moving forward.
You mentioned evolution, and a number of times already. It's vital, isn't it? Because if you stand still, you're going backwards, aren't you, in professional sports? So the evolution of the pathway and these players is absolutely key for the future success and closer to home success, isn't it?
Yeah, without doubt. And I think one of the things I'm really excited and Matt and his team are doing at the moment is that they're exploring new ways to create opportunities for players. They're looking at different ways of how they can train more with more impact. They can gather more information on players. They can really stretch players with their appropriate support around them as well. And benchmarking players from across the whole region is really, really important, whether it's players from Cornwall, Devon, Dorset or Somerset coming together collectively at strategic age groups, that we can really understand clearly where players are compared to their peers. And then that puts us in a really good position where we can then make a decision on whether we're going to stretch players a little bit further and play them up age groups or play them in second team cricket. So that's really exciting moving forward. And I know everyone at the club really values the young talent that comes through and the work that's done within the pathway and also second team and professional cricket with this backroom staff here at the club. And, the future's looking really optimistic for some of the talent that we've got coming through the system.
You've mentioned the emergence of some of the younger players and some outstanding individual performances in the Royal London One Day Cup, like we saw with Ben Green. How would you sum up the competition as a whole?
So, at the beginning of the season, we were very, very optimistic. We felt we had a really, really strong squad. 2 overseas players, 2 quality international overseas players. We obviously understood that we'd lost a number of players to the 100, and that was okay. But actually going into the competition itself, Peter Siddle wasn't available. Through the competition, Matt Renshall picked up an injury and couldn't play all the games. Josh Davey picked up an injury at the back end of the T20, so he wasn't available. George Thomas, who was on the pathway, recruited him into the Royal London squad for that competition, picked up an injury just before the start of that competition. So, that was frustrating. However, it did provide a really good opportunity for other players. So George's brother, Joss, got an opportunity to come into the squad. 2 players that were outside our pathway but had been on the pathway historically got opportunities as well. And it also allowed players like Casey Aldridge and James Rue to play some really key, important roles for the team within that competition as well. So the learning we took from, James Rue scoring, the first team 100, the role that Casey played with the new ball and through the middle and at the end, the opportunity we got to observe Alfie Ogborn, Josh Thomas and others as well, it allows us to make really good informed decisions moving forward, but also it creates the opportunity for them, and Jace can talk about this in more depth than I can, to really go out there and experience it. The more experience we can give these players, we put ourselves in a really good position to accelerate their development.
Moving on to Jason, Charles touched on it there, the acceleration of those players' development. I mean, the fact that James Rue was playing first-team cricket in front of full houses against professional players at such a young age in the tournament previously, I mean, that has to have played a part in the fact that he is where he is now. You can say what you like about the 100 and the availability of players, but there's got to be no doubt that young players experiencing proper tournament cricket against some of the best players in the country is going to improve their development and show whether they've got what it takes.
Yeah, it gives us a window into their future, doesn't it? I think if you look back historically, if the 100 wasn't around, some of those guys wouldn't have got that opportunity. And I think one of the blessings, I guess, from my side, purely as a coach, being on the peripheral at that time, being able to take a step back and not be in the bubble of what's happening in county cricket, and then watching from afar was incredibly pleasing and positive. And I imagine for Andy and Tweds, who had the opportunity to lead in my absence, it's incredibly frustrating when you're losing games. But I saw exactly what you're talking about there, Spence, in that young players having an opportunity to fulfil roles that they're arguably not ready to fulfil. But you find out about individuals. You know, I saw Casey lead the attack as a young bowler who'd experienced some first-class cricket, but was having to lead a very, well, sometimes experienced, but very young attack, take the new ball, be the senior figure at a very young age. And those experiences themselves, both as cricketers and as people, will help the club and those guys as individuals in the future. So I remember having conversations with Andy through that, where I was incredibly positive about what I was seeing, despite the results, which is never great when you're losing games. But sometimes you have to be able to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And as Andy alluded to, with Alfie Ogborn coming on, we saw things there that demonstrated he can compete with some of the best players in the country. And then that gets you really excited about what his ceiling could be as a cricketer moving forward.
Let's move on to the LV Insurance County Championship now, what many people consider to be the Holy Grail. Obviously Somerset have been up and around challenging for the Red Ball title, whether that be the County Championship or the Bob Willis Trophy a couple of years ago. How frustrating for you both was it that Somerset were not challenging for that title towards the end of this season?
Well, obviously it's incredibly frustrating. I think, my philosophy has not changed. Every game that we go into, irrespective of whether it's 4-day, T20, 50 over cricket, is, you want to win that game for Somerset. So it hasn't changed. And then the nature of how we've played over the last few years, we've played, some fantastic cricket, arguably become accustomed to winning and being at the top end of the table. So that in itself creates an expectation within the dressing room and certainly outside the dressing room. So there was an expectation at the start of the year. The side on paper looked fantastic. We'd recruited really well from an overseas point of view. And we started terribly. I mean, that's the reality. We had a brilliant pre-season. Some of the cricket we played, certainly while we were away in Abu Dhabi, funnily enough, competing against Essex, we looked in a really good place. And we had a few setbacks going into that first game. We didn't put out the 11 that we were going to put out 24 hours before that. So, and that's certainly not an excuse because we have to deal with those circumstances and situations. But I think that first game hit us hard, coming off the back end of a poor finish to the Championship the year before. We didn't start the season well, and it took us a long time to recover, which was a real shame. But I take a lot of pride in the guys through that middle period when we needed to draw games, we needed to win games. They demonstrated a lot of resilience, and in adverse conditions, in the fact that there was a lot of injuries, there's lots of things happening off the field that was having an impact on the field. So to get to a position where we managed to stay up, and it's an experience we hadn't faced for a number of years, so the guys will take a lot from that as well. So it was certainly a challenging year from a red ball point of view, but one that when you look purely at the table was disappointed. But I think it's important we look for the positives within that, and some of the emergence of some of the players and some of that resilience that's been developed in the dressing room.
And some important lessons learned?
Absolutely, always. And I think that will always be the case, or should be the case. Every time we play, every time we practice, it's an opportunity for us to get better, and we've got that philosophy within the dressing room. So irrespective, if we'd have won all 3 trophies, we'd have been having the same conversation. So that's always the case for us. But I think one of the things we recognised, what we'd done historically, is we'd asked a lot of the players. The schedule had been ever changing. The demands on the players was growing all the time. And when you produce your own players, you expect a lot of them. And they play across 3 formats. And I think we've recognised that's not sustainable for the levels that we want to attain. So we've had to recruit, we've had to push for more money off Sarge, but we've had to recruit. We need that depth. You know, we saw Craig Overton was away. When Craig's away, it makes a difference. If Lewis isn't 100% fit, it makes a difference. These guys are some of the best cricketers in the country, and to then replace them isn't easy. We've got some incredibly talented young players, but they're not polished. They're not going to be as consistent as Craig and Lewis. So we needed more depth. We need to be able to rest Craig and not lose anything. We need to be able to rest Lewis and not lose anything. And so that's what we're trying to do, so that we can be as competitive across 3 formats and play the same standard and deliver the same set of skills that we have done over the last few years.
You mentioned there that you're chasing Andy Hurry to put his hands in his pockets for more overseas players. Andy, you must have been delighted by your recruitment of the overseas players this year. Siddle and Renshaw, at the start of the season fitted in brilliantly, and then we had obviously the two professionals from Pakistan coming in as well, and both performed. How important is it that they perform on the field, but also buy into the culture of the club, which I know is so important to yourself?
Well, it's important to everybody, and I think one of the key strengths of the club is, with coaches like Jace, Paul, Greg, been around the club a long time. We've got sports science and medicine staff that have been around the club a long time. We've got people that work around the organisation that really understand the DNA of the club and what the club stands for. And so, it is important that players do fit in off the field as well. It's important that they can share their experiences. They've all been on a journey from young players that are inexperienced through to the international game, and there's some incredibly powerful stories that they will share, some experiences they will share that again is accelerating the development of our players as well. We're very tight. We spend a lot of time in each other's company. The character, the personality of overseas players is fundamentally important. But there's lots of conversations, lots of research that goes on between Jace, myself, other coaches, players, around what type of player are we looking for that's going to be the best fit for us around each competition. What do we know about individuals? And we have to do a lot of research to make sure we're getting the right players in. It's fundamentally important that people that come into our environment are adding value on the field and off the field as well.
So would it be the case that you could have the greatest player in the world, but if they didn't fit into the dressing room, that wouldn't be a right fit for Somerset?
It might not be. They might be phenomenal on the pitch. So I think ideally you're looking for all those contributing factors. Sometimes you might have to make some sacrifices. It depends on what the needs are. But in an ideal world, we're all about development. We're all about growth as a club, and it's all about us moving towards our aspirations of winning silverware and winning games of cricket and inspiring the next generation of players to come through the system and really connect to the game. And we want people out there that people get really excited about. We want people inside the changing room who other people want to spend time with and are fascinated and curious to have conversations with. Those sorts of things are really, really important, and I think they are some of the substance that the success the club has had in recent years has been built around. We've got some very, very good people, and it's important to get that balance right between the quality you can get on the field with the quality you receive off the field as well.
Staying with recruitment, you must be delighted with the deals that the club have managed to get over the line already ahead of 2023, bringing in Sean Dixon and Tom Kohler-Cadmore, 2 players who have got a history of making runs and doing so quickly and in some cases beautifully.
Yeah, I think we've been very fortunate to be able to recruit 2 players of that calibre. Going to add value to our squad as well moving forward, playing across the formats of the game. And again, we work very tightly together, understanding what our needs are going to be, doing our research into players. So really excited about the opportunities that lay ahead of them and the contributions that both those players, as well as everyone else in the squad, can make moving forward.
Jason, are you happy with the deals he's done to help strengthen your squad?
Yeah, absolutely. As Andy alluded to, we spend a lot of time together from a strategy point of view, and you're trying to, you want as much depth in the squad as you can have without stifling anyone's opportunity for development, and that's a real fine balance because, if we had an unlimited checkbook, which would be nice, it's never happening, but it would be nice. It wouldn't be as easy as going out there and recruiting all the best players because you'd lose all your players with potential, and we certainly can't afford to do that. But there were some gaps that certainly needed filling. We've had some some big shoes to fill of players that have left over the last few years. And we've got some incredibly talented young players as well. And it's getting the experience and those young players getting the balance right to ensure we're performing on the field.
You mentioned there's some big shoes to fill. Obviously, we've seen the likes of in the last few years, Trigo, Drskothic, Waller and Hildreth depart the club. Those are big shoes to fill, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really exciting is that the next Marcus Drskothic, the next James Hildreth, you mentioned Max and Triggs there, they're in the dressing room already. So what you're hoping for is that someone overtakes and breaks their records and goes beyond, and we get Trez's name off this pavilion and put someone else's on it at some stage. But I think it's important to keep looking forward. We've lost some incredible talent, there's no doubt that, and some great people. But the next James Hildreth's in that dressing room. George Bartlett, could be anybody that's in there that can one day surpass some of the great feats that those guys have achieved. And I think it's important we keep banging that message.
Now, we'll look ahead to 2023 in a minute. Let's focus finally on 2022. If you could pick one highlight from the previous season, what would that be?
That's a tough question, that, Spence. I think there's a couple of things. So if I look back, I think the quarter-final here against Derby, very similar to the year before that when we came back from COVID and we played Lancashire in that quarter-final. But I think the quality of cricket that was on show that day, it was a perfect T20 game from a batting point of view and then from a bowling point of view. So, and then to have a full house, the atmosphere, everything that went with that was certainly a fantastic evening to be part of. I think the game here, the 4-day game against Northants, we'd played demonstrated a lot of resilience in the games leading up to that, but we needed to win, and to put in a performance of that calibre was more around how we'd played our cricket over the last 2 or 3 years. So to see that was really pleasing, and I guess under that kind of pressure, there was a lot of noise around that. Certainly I didn't want to be the coach that got relegated at that stage. So it was a challenging time, and to see the guys stand up and play the way they did and have such a comprehensive win was certainly pleasing. And I guess those are 2 team performances, and then within that there were some unbelievable individual performances as well.
Andy, same question for you. If you could pick one moment of 2022, what's that going to be?
It's a really difficult question to answer because there's so many highlights throughout the year that are really, really special. I think Jace has already shared about the quarter-final, the championship game here against Northants. I agree with that. I also sense that you're asking me to think of something different to that. The emergence of some of the younger players, and Jace has alluded to them already. The development of Ben Green from a leadership but also performance perspective, I think is really exciting moving forward. And the emergence of James Rue as well, again for the club, is really, really exciting. And there's a lot of cricket ahead of them, and being patient and understanding their games is going to be really, really important. But one of the highlights for me is how everyone stayed together. We had some incredible highs throughout the year, and we had some really challenging times. We're going to have more and more challenging times moving forward. That's the reality of professional sport. And, what's really, really pleasing is how everyone stuck together and worked their way through it. So that was really pleasing for me as well.
Let's park 2022 now and move on to 2023. In the last few weeks, we've seen several Somerset players being selected for franchise white ball international competitions. We've seen a number of players selected to play for England Lions as well. What does that say to the world about the position that Somerset County cricket is currently in from a player development perspective?
It's difficult for me to answer on behalf of everyone else in the world, but I would sense that people are looking at the club and going, wow, what are they doing? I alluded to it earlier on. It goes back a number of years, doesn't it? And, the emergence and development of someone like Craig and Lewis and Jack Leach, a number of years ago, and the opportunities they had coming through the club, and then the exposure they got into first-team cricket and then gone on to play international cricket. These guys would have been looking at previous Somerset players as inspirational role models, and now they're the inspirational role models for future generations. And I think it fuels itself. So previous players would have been inspiring this current crop, and this current crop now inspiring the next generation as well. And I think it's great credit to the club, the people involved, both inside the club but also who follow the club, and the way they back their players, the support that players get from our staff, both the coaching and sports science and medicine staff. I think it's the combination of a lot of things that enable players, and the coach has been brave enough to pick them and have the courage to pick them early. I think is a contributing factor to that so many players being selected across so many different opportunities across the whole world. It's in a really exciting place to be. Sometimes very challenging to manage, but it's very, very exciting, not only for this current crop, but the guys that are coming through the system as well.
And Jason, you must be pleased as well, because exposure to these competitions, playing with and against some of the best players on the planet, working with some of the best coaches in the world, it's only going to benefit their game both short and long term, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's only going to benefit us on the park come the summer. I think those diverse experiences that the numerous players are getting right now, because they'll have choices to make in those environments. You hope they represent Somerset in the right way, and I'm sure they are, but they'll be getting a lot of information, lots of opportunities, and more importantly, growing as people. And that's, it's fantastic to see, and it presents challenges here because obviously a lot of players are away. So I think it's incredibly exciting, but it's the future of the game where players are going to be afforded a lot of opportunities, and hopefully they keep looking at Somerset.
We've had Christmas. We've had New Year's Eve. The fixtures are out. The season is on the horizon. We've seen the players coming in. Jamie Thorpe's prodding them and poking them, and they're going for runs in the rain. How are preparations for the forthcoming season going?
They're going incredibly well. I mean, despite some of the challenges of players popping in and out and here and there and all over the world. But I think for the nucleus of guys that are here, it's been fantastic. I think, we're incredibly open and transparent as a group of people. And we asked a lot of the group towards the back end of the year, and we had some really honest feedback from the group. So, because I'm sure, head coaches, directors of cricket around the country, there's that air of optimism that builds now towards pre-season, and everyone thinks it's going to be their year. But from my side, I think there's a level of excitement, certainly I haven't experienced for a while, with it. We've taken some learnings, we've listened to certainly some of the feedback from the players, and we're starting to apply some of that, certainly within our practice environments, how we're managing people, looking at what players' needs are moving forward, and really trying to give the guys the opportunity to be the best version of themselves, to give them the opportunity to fulfil potential, and ultimately perform for Somerset in the summer. So I think arguably, probably since the day I took the job, this is probably the most excited I've been, because I actually think that as a group of people, we're really starting to grow now. And I think that if we can get that to transfer into performance and get the right blend of overseas players to fit the group of cricketers that we've got right now, there's nothing that we can't achieve.
Let's finish things off finally by asking you both the same question. What constitutes success for Somerset in 2023?
Again, it's a great question in some respects, but there's so many. I'm not going to talk about winning trophies. Because I think there's so many successes within it already. Is it success that we've got so many players around the world playing in franchise cricket? Again, we could debate till the cows come home. Some people see that as a huge success. Some people will challenge that. I think, I'd like to sit back in September and know that we've given every competition an absolute crack to. We want to win, obviously, but it's how we do that. We're a process-driven environment, so. Within that, what's success? There'll be some individuals, the emergence. James Rue's a great example. That's a huge success for the club. Looking back to 2022, but there's no trophies in the cabinet. Tom Abel being selected for the Lions. Jack Leach continually playing for England, and how well he's demonstrating what he's capable of on the world stage. So they're all successes. So I think that to be definitive and go, this is what constitutes success, I think hopefully we're sat there in September looking back with immense pride, and there'll be numerous things that we're incredibly proud of that then constitute success.
And Andy, what constitutes success for you in Somerset?
Yeah, I reflect everything that Jason's just said there. I think they're all really, really important. We're ambitious as an organisation, as a cricket club. I think taking a step back from that and just going behind the scenes a little bit, I think success for us is the continued development of our people. So we're seeing players getting better. You know, there's that. What does that look like? That looks like improved performances on the pitch. That looks like more competition for places. It looks like young guys really pushing for selection in first team cricket. You know, that's really, really exciting. I think, again, it's the development of our people behind the scenes. You know, our coaches, again, developing, improving in developing their expertise. Our sports science and medicine staff. You know, the young players in the pathway in the system. Again, making it very difficult for us not to bring on to the professional staff, you know, would be success for us. I think our connectivity with our national county partners around the region, you know, that's really, really important to us moving forward as we develop and widen that net of talent across the southwest here in the region. One thing that really gets me out of bed every single morning is, and I know Jace feels very similar to this is a very unique opportunity that we have, because we're a unique club that has such a connectivity to the local community. And I think if we can inspire the local community and the region through our performances and some of the good news stories that come through next year, I mean, that would be success for me.
Well, let's hope that we can achieve all of those things in 2023. Andy Hurry, Jason Kerr, thank you very much indeed for your time. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody associated with the Somerset County Cricket Club, and I wish you all the very best for 2023.